Hello, welcome to People Powered Media Fest here on PhillyCAM. In this segment, you're going to get special coverage of Election Day 2020. My name is Dennis Link. I'm a reporter for PhillyCAM Voices, and I'm happy to be joined with a co-host, Vincent Thompson. So Vincent Thompson is he is a communications founder of Media Man Communications, and he is also director of communications for City Council member Kenyatta Johnson. So Vincent, I'm happy to see you today on an exciting election day.
That today I am speaking in my role as an owner of a communications company. I'm not speaking in my role as the councilman because I am not on the clock, right? I'm a city employee, so I can't do elections and talk in the midday. But if something comes up with the councilman, I'll put on that hat for the sake of the listeners.
Okay, that sounds great, Vincent. So one of the things that I wanted to get into is talking about how things look in terms of voting here in Philadelphia and then in Pennsylvania in general. Because one of the things that they always say is the only poll I care about is election day.
That's true.
And typically in the past, that meant that, the campaigns did their work. And then you found out what happened on election day after people voted and you started counting the votes. Now, what's different about this year is that mail-in balloting and early voting is being used on an unprecedented level, not only here in Pennsylvania, but all around the United States. So it's actually been election day for about 2 months. So there's a lot that we've been able to determine about what the electorate looks like way before election day. So one of the things that I wanted to get into is some numbers, but I just wanted to jump to you real quick, Vincent, and get your take on that, and what your sense is of the use of mail-in balloting and what the turnout looks like so far based upon early returns.
Well, let me say this, Dennis. If people are hearing echoes, that's always technical gremlins that happens in broadcasting. But this is such an important election that we want to echo its importance. This is something about this election that I think people should understand. In most parts of the country, they have been doing early voting or mail in voting for years. So it's not new to most people across the country. It is now new in Pennsylvania because this is the first year that we've ever had mail-in elections. So imagine doing a mail-in ballot in a state of 12 million people when the first year you're doing it is the presidential election. Now, Dennis, I came during the primary and said that the mail-in balloting in the primary was going to kind of be a test run for election boards across the state to see how they'd handle it, to see what kind of problems they might have, what things they can fix. Well, the primary was like half of the voters that are going to come out today. So this is when the system is really going to be tested. Now, here's the interesting thing for most listeners and most viewers. We've already had 120 million people vote in America already, either through mail-in ballots or early voting in states. There's about 245 million registered voters across the country. So we're already at 50% before we even hit today. Let's assume you get another 25%, because national presidential elections usually have about 65, 70% voter turnout. Now in Philadelphia, 400,000 people have already returned their ballots before they even started counting at 7 o'clock this morning. So the vote count has actually started in Philadelphia from people who have gotten in mail-in votes. So that's about 400,000. Since the lines have been long, super long, around the city today, I'm going to estimate that we're going to get about another 300 to about 350,000 people that actually vote in person at polling places. So that'll take us to about 750, 800,000 voters. Now, only in 2016 rather, I think in the general election for president between Hillary Clinton and President Trump, only about 707,000 people actually cast ballots. So we're going to have more people cast ballots in this election in Philadelphia than cast it in the November election in 2016. The key to a Biden victory in the state is how many votes he gets out of Philly, right? I'm telling folks right now, Donald Trump's going to get 100,000 votes out of Philly. He got 100,000 when he ran for 2016. I see no reason to think that that's not going to be the same number. The key is Hillary Clinton got about 545,000 votes in 2016. How many votes does Joe Biden get? He needs to do really well in Philly. His people would like to see him get 750,000 votes out of Philly. Because if he got 750,000 votes out of Philly, that could counter the other parts of the state where he's expected to lose. I tell people, think of the state of Pennsylvania as like a box, right? The right side of the box is the eastern part of the state. Okay, that's where Philly, the suburbs are. Then you've got the central part of the box, which is the Republican T, which is they always go Republican, very red. And then you've got the other side of the box, which is, I guess, on your left, which would be Erie, Pittsburgh, those kind of areas. Donald Trump's going to do well in the center part of the state, right? He'll probably do well even in Scranton, where Joe Biden was raised. But the key is he's got to get enough votes from the other parts of the state to counter any red wave in Pennsylvania. And I truly think whoever wins Pennsylvania wins the election.
Yeah, with 20 electoral votes, Pennsylvania is a huge prize, and they really need it as pathways. It's really important to both campaigns. So I think we are going to be the focus of a lot of attention both today and in the coming days as they continue counting the votes, which we know is going to take days as opposed to a regular machine count of votes, which usually was done within that night. So, Vincent, related to what you're saying about the voter turnout and how important it is, I just want to break down some numbers that we have from the PA Secretary of State. So, just for some perspective, and you had mentioned it before, the total turnout in 2016 in the presidential election between Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump was 707,000, a little over 7,000 votes that were cast here in Philadelphia for both candidates. So the number of mail-in ballot requests was almost 437,000. So if everybody in theory voted that requested a ballot, 52% of the total that was accrued in 2016. So that is an enormous amount of people that are using vote by mail. And in the primary, we saw it was 50%, just a tad over 50%. And now, in terms of mail-in balloting requests, it's up to 62%. So we'll see how many of those come in. And we actually know some numbers.
We know 400 have already come in, Dennis. So that's a lot. The fact that you still have 37,000 mail-in ballots that haven't been returned. Usually in Philadelphia politics, you don't have 100% voter turnout with anything. Somebody forgets. The dog eats their ballot. You know what I mean? You always have something that happens. But the fact that you've got 437,000 people that requested a mail-in ballot and 400,000 have already come back. And let's assume that a lot of other ballots are going to come back today, right? Like people are going to go to your satellite center, which you can still do. If you have a mail-in ballot, I'm just using this as an example. This is not an actual mail-in ballot. But if you have a mail-in ballot and you've already filled it out, you don't have to go to a polling site. You can go to one of the 17 drop-off centers around the city. Now, the drop-off centers will close at 6:30. So if you wanted to go to the drop-off center to, say, get a replacement ballot or something happened to your ballot, that closes at 6:30. But I just found out from the city commissioners that staff is going to be at every drop-off center to receive your completed ballot until 8 o'clock. So you don't have to wait in a line. You can just take it, drop it in a slot, and you're done. Now, if you go to a drop box that looks like a large green postal box, excuse me, my sources are calling me. They're going to be open until 8 o'clock as well. But at 8 o'clock, they're going to lock the actual drop-off boxes. So there's still ways to vote. But if we've got that many people doing mail-in ballots, and then we're going to have a huge line around the polling places of 400,000, I think we could have 70 to 75% voter turnout, which is not unusual in a presidential election. And this presidential election, we could have 80% in Philadelphia, which is unheard of. And that's happening during a pandemic.
Yeah, and I think what's really important for people to realize at this point is the fact that I looked at some numbers as of the end of yesterday. So as of the end of November 2nd on Monday, the number of outstanding mail-in ballots here in Philadelphia was almost 95,000. So that's about 22%, or 1 in 5 of all mail-in ballots are still outstanding, and the majority of those are going to be Democrat mail-in ballots. So what you said, Vincent, about people, taking the opportunity, it's still not too late. You can fill out your mail-in ballot, and then you can take it to a drop-off box. You can take it to the city commissioner or representative at a polling place, and you can still get it in. It's a little disconcerting that in an election that was decided by 44,000 votes statewide, that Philadelphia alone still has about 95,000 ballots that are outstanding. Now
But
that
people are
may have
like,
gone down, as this day has gone on. But I'm just
right.
saying, going into election day, that's what we were looking at.
Let's say this: people have a tendency in politics to wait to the last minute, right? They just are. Americans are procrastinators by nature, right? So it's not unusual that you've got people that wait until the last minute. But here's another thing I want to explain to people who are listening. If you have a mail in ballot and you decide that you want to go to a polling place and vote, okay, you have to bring your mail in ballot with you, all three parts of the mail in ballot. So you got to bring the outer envelope, the one that has the barcode on it. You've got to bring the inner part, which you would put the ballot, and importantly, the ballot, right? So you have to bring all three with you. And then you have to tell people that I want to exchange my ballot. So you would give them your ballot, ladies and gentlemen. They'd spoil the ballot, and then they'd allow you to vote on a machine. So if you want to go stand in a line because you're like, I want to touch the machine, I want to feel the machine, I want to know I vote, and you have a mail in ballot, you better bring your mail in ballot with you. Now, if you go and you don't have your mail in ballot, you'll still be able to vote, but it's called a provisional ballot. So you will not be able to vote at the machine. You would get a provisional ballot. You are allowed to vote by provisional, and the provisional votes are the last votes that are counted. So what you're going to see in this election is everybody who voted by mail-in, they're getting counted now, right? So we can have some kind of numbers for you. Then after 8 o'clock, they'll count all the machine ballots, right? The things that you did in the machine, and those are kind of fast to do because it's just a computer. Stick the chip into the computer, it prints it out. Then your provisional ballots are the last ones. They use the provisional ballots. They count them last because they want to compare to make sure you may not have double voted or voted in another location, but you can vote. So if you go to a place, you go to a polling place, you already requested a mail-in ballot, and you don't have it, you can ask for a provisional ballot. Just wanted to get that out there for people so that they know, because there's still a lot of that confusion.
Now, that's excellent information, Vincent. And what's going on in terms of people getting in their mail-in ballots at this late time. It's important not only in Philadelphia, but it's important extending out of Philadelphia into the Blue County suburbs. So when I look at the same statistics for outstanding ballots in areas that are also very Democrat friendly and presumably Biden voters, if you look at Bucks County, they still have 24% of their mail-in ballots that are outstanding. If you look at Chester County, they're doing a lot better. They're at 17%. But then if you look at Delaware, Delaware is way behind. They have 33% of their ballots outstanding. That's almost 50,000 ballots. If you look at Montgomery County, they're doing well, comparatively, but they're still at 20% that are still outstanding. And again, like I said, with Philadelphia, we're at 22. So why is this important? Well, when you look at the fact that in 2016, Hillary Clinton only won 11 out of 67 PA counties, she actually was picking up the counties that had most of the votes that were there available. So, for instance, those 11 counties, as a percent of all votes cast in 2016, was 53%. So over half of all votes cast were in these 11 counties that all went Democrat for Hillary Clinton. So in terms of her percentage in these 11 counties versus what she got elsewhere, she got 67% of all her votes from just these 11 counties. So it was really important for her to drive up the total there, and it's going to be really important for Joe Biden to do the same. So when you look at the advantage that she had in these 11 counties over what Trump had in these 11 counties in 2016, she had an advantage of 789,000. She clobbered him by 25 percentage points in these 11 counties. So that includes Philadelphia and the ring counties, but it also includes other places in the state like Allegheny County, which is near Pittsburgh. It includes Center, which is like upstate New York, upstate Pennsylvania, where Penn State is located. You have Dauphin County, which is Harrisburg. You have Lackawanna and Monroe, which is the Scranton Wilkes-Barre area. So when I'm looking at these numbers, we see the areas that Hillary Clinton did great in 2016 and that Biden is going to need in 2020 still have issues with outstanding ballots. In some cases from 20 to 33%. So that's something that, as we were talking about Philadelphians needing to jump forward, we're also going to need to see that statewide.
And Dennis, I tell people all the time, numbers are important in politics because they tell you trends, right? And if I'm a Biden person, that's a disturbing trend, right? That people haven't gotten their mail-in ballots if I'm in the collar counties. It's traditional for Democrats that win statewide in Pennsylvania to only do well in like 15 counties. Like you can win Pennsylvania if you win like 15, 16 counties, right? Former Governor Ed Rendell did it. Democrats do it all the time. So they get the big places. They get Philly, they get the Philly suburbs, they get the places that you talked about. Altoona, Lancaster, Western Pennsylvania, Pittsburgh, and maybe some of the outside counties, parts of Erie, that kind of thing. But that's what's critical, because I'm telling you, I think Donald Trump is going to do incredibly well in the rest of the state. And you're right, in 2016, that's what he did with Hillary Clinton. He would go to like Montour County, right? And there might be 10,000 voters in Montour County. Donald Trump would get 9,500 and Hillary would get 500, right? Another thing that would be helpful for Joe Biden is if in those red counties, he got at least 30%. Let's say he gets 3 out of every 10 votes in a red county. Just the math shows that he can't win. He being Donald Trump couldn't win Pennsylvania. So I tell people this, I still think Pennsylvania is a toss-up. I know that the polling says that Joe Biden is leading, but polling has been wrong. I've covered Pennsylvania a lot. I've been in those small towns where Trump is huge, and they're going to come out and vote. They're going to vote heavily, just like I think people throughout the country are going to vote heavily in this election. But I definitely think don't underestimate the suburban and middle part of the state. Don't underestimate that. Dennis, I'm going to let you do this because I have to take this call, so I'll be right back.
Okay, no problem. So yeah, since Vincent talked about polls, I wanted to give some perspective on that because a lot of people are distrustful of polls, and they looked at Real Clear Politics. Is this website that covers a lot of election stuff, and it does averages of a lot of polls to try to come up with a number that they think a given candidate has an edge and may win by in the election. So in 2016, I believe the Real Clear Politics average was somewhere around 3 or 4 for Hillary Clinton. So that, of course, was a big surprise to people when Donald Trump barely edged her out in 2016. So what I did was I went back to those polls and tried to pull out what were the most accurate ones for Pennsylvania. And here's what I found. So the Susquehanna poll was one that predicted Hillary +2. And then as a result, the actual result was Trump plus 0.7%. So they were pretty close. And then Trafalgar was another one that had Trump up 1.9. So that was actually an outlier that had him with an edge in the state instead of Hillary Clinton. But again, it ended up he was at 0.7, which was pretty darn close. And then there was this big data poll where they predicted Trump to be 0.6 ahead, and he won by 0.7. So big data really killed it in 2016. So they did really good jobs on that. And then insider advantage, they also they predicted a Trump win by a similar margin as big data. So what is that telling us if we look ahead to 2020? Well, all 4 of those polls are giving an edge to Donald Trump right now in 2020 over Joe Biden. Susquehanna, Trafalgar, Big Data, and Insider Advantage. The most accurate polls for 2016 are all giving an edge to Donald Trump to win Pennsylvania again over Joe Biden. So that's something where if you look at polls, what I've tried to do is push aside some of the ones that created noise and gave us that big surprise about the result in 2016. But what we're seeing is that they're all saying it's going to be close again. So the idea that these polls that have Biden up by 8 and 5 and 7, those are not credible when you look at past history in the state, and when you also look at who was the most accurate in 2016 and what are they saying now in this election. So that's why it's important. Getting back to what we were talking about before, Vincent and I, it's important to get those outstanding mail-in ballots to your election officials in whatever way you can, because that's a lot of votes that are left on the table.
I'm back, Dennis. Sorry, I'm still dealing with the. See, I'm still on the phone. I'm like those sports commentators. I'm getting you accurate information as things develop. So I just wanted to handle that with what's going on. The councilman I work for, Councilman Kenyatta Johnson, who represents the 2nd Councilmanic District here in Philadelphia, which includes the airport, the Navy Yard, parts of Center City, parts of Point Breeze, parts of Grays Ferry, and Southwest Philadelphia. He's a ward leader, so he was talking to me, giving me some inside information about how lines are long. So I want to make sure that we have the most accurate information. So as you were saying, Dennis, people need to get their, right now, you're either going to vote or you're not going to vote, right? And we have more ways than ever in Philadelphia history for you to get your vote in. If you have a mail-in ballot and you haven't filled it out, sit around the coffee table and just fill it out. The front part of the ballot is the presidential election, the auditor general race, the state reps races. But do me a favor, ladies and gentlemen, flip it over to the back, because that's where the ballot questions are, right? There are 4 ballot questions on the ballot. There's a couple, I can't call for people to do anything for a ballot question, but most ballot questions in Philadelphia pass. And, the ballot questions are very important. And they are just basically yes or no ballot questions. So if you vote yes, more people in the city vote yes than no, that ballot question passes. If people vote no, then it fails. Most ballot questions don't fail in Philadelphia. So I'm urging people, if you haven't filled out your mail-in ballot, fill it out, follow the instructions, take it to a satellite center or a drop-off center. You can find that information on the city commissioner's website, which is Philadelphia Votes, all one word.com. All of us elected officials are tweeting it out. So if you want to go to my councilman's Twitter, his councilman Twitter handle is Council Member KJ. So it's Council Member KJ. All right. K like in Kellogg, J like in Johnson. So you can find it on Twitter as well. Or if you really feel like going to a polling place and voting, get up, get dressed, and go out. The lines are pretty simple. You might spend maybe 20, 25 minutes in the line. It's not super cold outside, but bundle up, be ready, practice social distancing. You'll get in and get out. And I also want to say something really special to the poll workers. Please be kind to them. They are working under unusual circumstances. They're trying to do things as fast as they can and as quickly as they can. They're good people. They're your neighbors. So be patient with them. If they're having trouble finding you in a book, that's okay. It's the book's fault. It's not their fault. If a machine's not working, it's the machine's fault, not their fault. So have some patience today, and we'll all get through it.
And Vincent, you had mentioned in talking about the ballot questions that there were also some statewide races that are on the ballot. So I wanted to get into that with you a little bit, because we talk so much about the presidential election race. We kind of forget that there's going to be people who are going to be running our state for the next 4 years. That we also need to be thinking about, well, what do they know and what are their chances of winning? So I want to start with the Attorney General, and I'm just going to give briefly, like a brief explanation, for everybody about what each of these offices does. So the Attorney General is the top legal officer of the state. He advises and represents the PA legislature and state agencies, and acts as the people's lawyer for Pennsylvania citizens. And they serve a 4-year term. So the incumbent is Democrat Josh Shapiro, and he was elected in 2016. And he's running against Heather Heidelbaugh, who's an experienced attorney from out in Western PA. So, Vincent, I just wanted to throw out some polling. We don't get a whole lot of polling on these things, but right now it looks like Shapiro's in a pretty good position. He's been leading in, I believe, the 4 polls that I've seen that have been taken during this election season. And the last one I saw, he's up 52% to 41% over Heidelbaugh. So Josh Shapiro made some headlines, going after the Catholic Church and exposing, pedophile priests and so forth. He's spoken out a lot against Donald Trump and his travel bans. And today, or it might have been yesterday, he even spoke out, maybe out of turn, about how he believes Donald Trump is going to lose after all the votes are counted. So I wanted to ask you, Vincent, on that race, do you think Shapiro is in good shape? And what do you think about his recent comments?
Oh, I think that Josh Shapiro is going to win. He's an incumbent, right? So as I say every time I'm on the show, incumbents have to say, "I've done a great job. Keep me in for another 4 years, and I'll continue to do good work." Challengers have to say, "The man or a woman is a bum. He or she is terrible. Get him out." So I don't think that there's enough support for the Republican candidate to knock out Josh Shapiro. But here's the thing: if Donald Trump has coattails and and he wins Pennsylvania, she may win the Attorney General's office because people are voting for Donald Trump and the Republican that's with them. The thing I think that helps all the candidates that are incumbents is that Pennsylvania is no longer a one lever state. So there used to be a time where you could just go into a polling place, hit the Democratic button, and it would vote for every Democrat. You could hit the Republican button, and it would vote for every Republican. Well, you can't do that anymore. So when you go into a polling place, if you want to vote for the president, attorney general, auditor general, your state rep, your ballot questions, you have to push on each individual button. So you may have people that may vote for president, Democrat or Republican, and not vote for the attorney general. You may have some people who vote for, president and a ballot question and not vote for anybody. So I think because of that, I think Josh Shapiro is in a good position to win another term. And there's also speculation that he may run for governor once Tom Wolf is no longer governor.
Yeah, absolutely. So that'll be something to watch too, well after the election. So you were talking about how, an incumbent a lot of times has an advantage, Vincent.
Mhm.
When we're talking about the auditor general race, here's a situation where there is no incumbent because
Right.
you have the person who was the auditor general was term limited and then now is running for Congress in what I believe is the 10th congressional district. So
Yes, up in Harrisburg. Yeah.
yeah. So she's interesting because she's from Philadelphia. She's a microbiologist and an entrepreneur by trade, and she's running for auditor general after having run before for lieutenant governor, I believe, in a past election.
Yeah.
So I've been looking at recent polls on her, and it's been a lot tighter with her than it was with Shapiro. So Timothy DeFore is a very experienced Republican running for auditor general. He's the controller of Dalphin County, and he's had a
Right.
lot of time as an auditor in other places. So he's been keeping it pretty close, and he's a rare African American candidate, on the Republican side. So I'm wondering, what do you think about this race? I think that I'm going to look at the polls here on Ahmad. The four was keeping it within like 3 or 4 percentage points, and the most latest poll has her up by 7, so she may be pulling away a little bit, but it's not comfortable. What do you think about her chances? Again, she doesn't have the advantage of incumbency, but she will have the advantage of getting a lot of votes from Philadelphia.
Well, her key is going to be like all the candidates. They're going to latch on to the top of the ticket, right? So it's basically every piece of literature you're going to see with Nina Ahmad is going to be like, vote for the president, Biden and Harris, and also vote for me, right? And I think she's going to try to get those coattails. I think this race could be tighter than people think. if Mr. DeFord wins, it's going to be because of the coattail effect of Donald Trump. It's going to have to be. If Republicans do well in Pennsylvania, it'll be the Donald Trump coattail. I think one thing that Republicans are hoping for is that they still keep the legislature, the state house and the state senate, because if Pennsylvania goes a blue wave, we could win the presidency. They could win the presidency in Pennsylvania. They can win auditor general and attorney general. But if they keep the state house and state senate, that would be a good night for Republicans because they still control what they'd have to deal with Governor Wolf. So if they don't win the presidency in Pennsylvania, they definitely want to keep the state house and state senate.
To speak on that, Vincent, I read that the political report still has the state senate as a heavy Republican lean, and it still has a slight lean to the Republicans, for the House. And I think the biggest reason is even though Democrats are very competitive in bluish type areas in the state for the state House, the problem is that there are Republicans upstate that are competitive, against Democratic incumbents. So it looks like, bottom line, the Democrats definitely have a chance at the state house, but it's an uphill battle, at least according to the Cook political report.
Well, remember I say all the time, Dennis, people say throw the bum out except my bum.
You said it.
I'll throw the bums out and they all stink except the guy or the woman I love. They're fantastic. So incumbency has its advantages, right? It just does. So, most people don't kick out their incumbents unless something happens. So I think here are my predictions at 12 o'clock. Okay. I still think it's 50-50 between Donald Trump and Joe Biden. But if Joe Biden gets the kind of wave out of Philadelphia, it could be a see you later, sayonara night for Joe Biden. And that would go a long way to helping him win the presidency. Right. I still think for Attorney General and Auditor General, the Democrat will win, right? I still probably think that the state house is going to stay Republican, but there's a possibility that they could lose seats, right? So it would be closer Democrat to Republican. And I still think the state Senate is going to stay Republican, might be closer, but it wouldn't surprise me if the Biden wave hits Pennsylvania, that it could mean changes in the state house and state Senate, which would be an amazing feat. But we are talking COVID 2020. So everything that I thought would never happen has happened this year. And I do think that the 4 ballot questions in Philadelphia will be approved.
Okay, great. So Vincent, it's been great talking with you, and I'm sure that our watchers and listeners have learned an awful lot. So I just want to tell everybody, thank you for joining us for this special Election Day coverage here on People Powered Media Fest on PhillyCAM. Thanks again, Vincent, and thanks to everybody who's been watching us. And get out there and vote, and good luck today, staying safe.
Thank you, everybody. Have a good day.